Oh my gosh, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're so excited to talk about God of Endings with you. And everybody, this is Jacqueline Holland.
Hi, thank you so much for reading my book. I'm very grateful.
Everybody here has thoroughly enjoyed it, and we have come up with a few questions to ask you. So we're going to start, and these are all book club regulars. These wonderful souls come to every book club, so they're voracious readers. So
Awesome.
we're going to go ahead and start with Kat.
Okay. Hey, Jacqueline. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet
Um,
you
my name is Kat. Absolutely adored God of Endings.
too. Thank
And
you.
one of the questions that popped into my mind was when you began writing God of Endings, did you kind of already have in mind that immortality was this like burden to carry, or is that something that kind of developed as you wrote and unpacked Anna's experiences?
Yeah, that was clear in the first moments of conceiving this, because I started writing this novel really like in a moment. This um I was just thinking weird thoughts as I often do, and I the thought came into my head of like, what would you do with eternity? And kind of a like, no, really, like, really, what would you do? And this character started talking to me and telling me like what she does with eternity. And it was, I mean, from the very beginning, I from the first instant, it was like I had this sense of like looking forward and just being like, ugh, like how do I give this structure? How do I break it up? How do I make it meaningful, and not just kind of disintegrate in that much time?
Yeah. So cool. Thanks so
Great
much for
question, though.
unpacking that.
Hi, Jacqueline. Also a
Hi.
really big fan. Loved it a lot. We were
Thank you.
talking a little bit earlier about how this is kind of like an interesting take on vampirism, and we were curious, did you have any vampire media influence God of Endings?
I really kind of didn't. I I hate admitting this because most of the people who read this book are vampire fans, but I really had not taken in much vampire media before that. I have never seen Twilight to this day. And that's not,
We can
snobbishness.
change that. Join our movie
Yeah,
club.
I mean, I should watch the whole thing, or read the whole thing. But yeah, it was a story that found me. And once I knew I was writing a vampire novel, I kind of didn't want to consume any vampire media because I didn't want to start reacting to it and start like navigating around it, which I think was a good choice because after I finished it, or at least the first draft, I like binged and I started seeing things and I was like, oh, dang, like interviewing a vampire interview with a vampire, they actually go to Egypt. Like there's just like these things that I'm like, oh, if I had known, I would have changed it, or I would have been like self-conscious about that. So I'm glad I didn't. But what I did instead is I researched vampire lore. So there is a sort of well, there's a gentleman from the 1800s named Montague Summers who did these sort of compendious studies of various creatures like werewolves and vampires. And he's got a number of volumes about vampires where he just collects the actual lore and like studies what were the stories about these things in the Caribbean, what were the stories about these things in ancient Greece, in Africa, things like that. And in studying that and reading that, I realized that vampire lore is super broad and super diverse. And I mean, there are vampires take so many different forms in historical lore, from like flesh-shedding hags who travel as a fireball through the night and eat the souls of children, or mothers who die in childbirth and come back and like take their children with them. There's all kinds of crazy stuff in the Philippines. There are these like flying creatures with their entrails hanging in the air. So it really made me feel really free to do kind of whatever I wanted. So I think it just kind of happened to work out perfectly. And now I feel like I've read or watched 80% of the vampire stuff and I love it. But I'm very glad that I waited to do that.
Oh,
Hi.
you made me really scared that it was gonna be like zoomed in. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, geez. All right. I very much enjoyed the prose, especially. It was just
Oh, thank you.
fantastic. From like page 2 on, I was like, I gotta write that down. That's really good. But my question in specific was that a lot of the other vampires in Anna's life are very like absent from it.
Uh,
Like they hang out in the periphery. And my question was more so to do with like if you've given thought to it, what is vampire culture like? Like what are they up to in their little havens and groups when they're hanging out and Anna's not there, obviously.
yeah. Um, that's a great question. Uh, I have some wonders or curiosities or thoughts about that, but I kind of knew that. So I've considered writing a sequel. People have mentioned like feeling like it's set up for a sequel, and I agree. Um, but I've kind of left the thinking about that for then because the way writing works for me is that there's an excitement to imagining and to world building, and I kind of try not to do that until I'm ready to like channel it. So I have some ideas. It's mentioned that the grandfather lives in Bordeaux, and so that to me is kind of a interesting, creepy like world that she will potentially enter and kind of like learn. Um, and yeah, I have some other ideas, but that is fun that I have saved for myself for another day.
Okay, very cool.
Okay, Jacqueline, I am up next. And my question is, the act of creating art is a constant motif in God of Endings. And with many instances, the creative act is tied to some level of suffering or tragedy. Kat and I were very close on this. And I think there was a third person. We all three had similar questions here. Why was that a constant aspect of the story? And do you believe that truest art is born out of some measure of suffering?
Yeah, I love that question. So the simple answer is yes. Um, I think that art is at its simplest an active longing. I think that artists are people who are skilled at longing. Um, and that my talkative cat is coming into the room now. Um, so to be an artist, I think is to feel yourself separated from something beautiful or transcendent or even like a longing for whatever it is you see in front of you to be permanent rather than fleeting and trying to catch it and hold it and retain it. And the act of longing, I think, is a kind of suffering, kind of beautiful, poignant suffering. Um, so, so yes, I do think that all art is at some kernel, an act of suffering. And I think that artists are especially attuned and gifted at longing and at transmuting longing into an artifact. So I do think that there's a strong connection between art and suffering. Uh, and I think many artists will tell you that like they're the rare person who sort of enjoys suffering in a strange way. But then I also think that art has a connection with production, reproduction, kind of fertility or fecundity, and it is a way of bringing something forth into the world. And bringing something forth into the world is, I think, by nature, a painful process, just as childbirth is a painful process. And those two themes of motherhood in some kind of form, or not even so narrow as motherhood, but caring for something, bringing something into the world, taking the risk of bringing something into the world and loving something in a world that is violent and dangerous. Um, it's all about love and suffering. I think it's just kind of a mashup of that. So, um, yeah, they said to me they're kind of overlapping themes or metaphors, but like almost more than metaphors in that they're kind of wed in a weird way. That was a strange answer, but
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hey, hey, Jacqueline. Good.
hi.
So for me, I really enjoyed some of the references you had to classic works in the story, like The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, Jean-Paul Sartre's No Exit. So I was just curious, in Anna's life, is there a particular work that she consumed throughout it that maybe left a long-lasting impression on her that kind of altered how she viewed the world, that type of thing?
That's a great question. And I am going to disappoint you so bitterly because I feel like 2 years ago I might have been so in her head that I would have known an answer. Um, but I am at this point so deep into my new novel and my new characters that it's sort of hard for me to like riff as Colette, you know? So
Yeah.
I think that the books that I placed in there, I definitely placed intentionally. I know there's some mentions of The Wizard of Oz and Dostoevsky, and um, I I think those are probably I kind of just trust what I wrote then.
Yeah.
But I could tell you the books that affected my new characters that I'm working on because I am very deep in their minds right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah.
Hello, it's still Kat. Um, so uh so much of this novel, for me anyways, one of the big themes that stood out was kind of wrestling with agency, right? What like the act of having a choice or lack thereof.
hmm
And I'm curious, how you see Anna's final choices, whether it's around, Leo, whether it's around like kind of coming to terms with the fact that like I actually do need to be around others like me and stuff like instead of like kind of trying to be away from it all, but like how some of her final choices might reflect her growth or her acceptance by the end of it all.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I do think that the whole book is about agency and is ultimately about courage, um, which is strange. I feel like that ends up being what everything I write is about. I'm not sure why. But yeah, I think that Anna Colette is mildly insufferable for a lot of the book because sees life as happening to her and she sees herself as being sort of borne along or buffeted, and in some ways victimized, and she is, um, but her response to that is to hide and to play it safe and to not risk anything and to sort of wall herself into this crypt of her own making. And she kind of, she's kind of making herself into this artifact in that her life is so idyllic and so beautiful. And she's trying to sort of manufacture this beauty that won't die, that won't age, that won't break, that she can control because she's scared, because she's a wuss. And and she has to like toughen up, like her uncle says, like her grandfather says, like, yeah, it's tough. What are you gonna do about it? Like you got a lot of time to fill. Are you really gonna spend it never risking anything? And loving another person is the ultimate risk. And actually the novel argues that bringing another life into this world is the ultimate risk. because you're not just risking yourself, you're risking that soul. And you're making a profound choice for them. So yeah, I mean, I think it's all building. The whole novel is building to like just, just grow up hair and like take life on and like do it. Because what else are you gonna do? You're just gonna shrivel into, what that Greek myth where the person is super old and like decaying because they forgot to ask for eternal youth. Um, so yes, I think you nailed it. It's all about that.
That's awesome. It almost sounds like it's like almost like her choice of like not wanting to make choices was like her playing it safe. And then at the end, she finally starts to actually take agency back, not because some points it was taken away from her, but a lot of it was just her own inaction, it seems like.
Yeah, and it hurts. Loss hurts. It takes a long time to recover. And she's been through a lot, so I get it. I relate, but there's also, that's where the beauty and joy is in life of like risking again.
Hi, I'm Maud.
Hello.
So the depictions of nature in this book were really lovely,
Thank you.
especially the sequences with Prioska, who is my favorite character. And I learned about Stoats, Sackers, and Desmonds from this book.
Yeah.
Um, are there specific personal experiences, like with the natural world, that you drew upon for writing this?
Yeah, I loved that question, and I'm very, very honored. Um, because I wanted, when you set out to write a book, there's like a vibe you want to achieve or a thing like even if you don't quite know all the plot, like the feel that you want to achieve. And so it sounds like to some extent what you're saying is that I achieved what I wanted to achieve, which is like I wanted it to feel very sweeping and like I wanted to see the mountains and I wanted to, be in these dark enchanted forests. So um, I have traveled a lot. I have been to France. The location that I had the most familiarity with was Egypt, because I have spent time in Egypt. Um, but I also, honestly, I think that I would attribute it more to literature than even to my own personal experiences because maybe it's kind of sad that an author should be trying to invoke an actual experience in the world, probably. But I feel like oftentimes when I'm writing, I'm trying to invoke an experience that I have had reading. I want other people to feel what I remember feeling when I read something that did that to me. So I guess kind of yes and kind of no. Also, art is a very important thing to me, and plein air painting. My husband was a painter, and I would go with him a lot when he would paint outdoors. And so I've been in a lot of beautiful places, looking at things the way he would look at things, and kind of seeing the light and seeing what it does. And I think that that has definitely affected me as a writer and made me a bit more of a visual writer and a writer connected to nature and the feeling of being out in nature and the beauty of it. Thanks for
You-
that question.
Hello, it's me again, Lawrence.
Hi.
Hi. Uh, so we had a pretty lengthy discussion on what the purpose or the relevance of the blood painter was. So we're
Uh-huh.
very curious.
I hope
Was it
you'll
to
explain
teach?
it to me.
Oh, okay. Well, from our point of view, it's to hopefully teach Colette to be around her own people because they were also artists. So
Hmm.
in a sense, she would be sticking around with them. But we're curious to see what your interpretation of that was, because that was a part that really stuck with me, the blood painter, only because I think that's just so like interesting. Uh,
Hmm.
so I'm interested to see what your perspective is on this.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a part that gets a lot of questions. It maybe feels a little out there. I think for me, the blood artist is a foil for Colette in that he is a little bit like, have you ever met someone who is like you and you hate them?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is kind of what he was in my mind. He sort of is doing what she's doing and in a more extravagant and unapologetic way. And she's able to look him in the face and like look at what he's doing and argue with him and have a debate about it and realize that, he makes a comment about he paints in blood because he will never have children. And so these are sort of like his offspring going out into the world, and she recognizes in that moment, I think she recognizes, oh, art, it's easy to think of that as your legacy, but that is a much safer legacy than people, than relationships, and the marks you actually leave on people. And I think I believe it's in that encounter that she kind of first talks about cowardice, and I think recognizes for herself, although she hasn't put it all together, though, that living only through art is a little bit cowardly. But it also sets up for her to have a weird blood painting in her car and for the cops to find that and be like, what is this
Yeah,
about?
100%. That feels like the most important part too.
Yeah.
Specifically having a blood painting in your car. But awesome. That was a great explanation. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass it on to Trista.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Trista. This is a one question performance.
Okay.
And I loved this book. I thought it was mesmerizing. I could not put it down. And I actually really love vampires and have for most of my life.
Nice.
So I'm gonna rephrase the question I wrote. As you said earlier, the definition of vampire across cultures and times has changed dramatically and includes and excludes so much. I
Mhm.
was wondering why you chose the specific traits you did for this novel to better explain the themes of what you were going for.
Yeah. Um, well, and I like play teacher and kind of turn it around on you guys and see what your guesses are about that. So obviously she drinks blood, and she stays sort of eternally youthful, but she doesn't have ordinary anatomical reproduction parts, um, and otherwise she's normal. Did anybody have any like thoughts on why those particular traits would be important to the story? I'm really curious about how people read this stuff. Yeah, you.
Yeah, I think I have an answer. If she had reproductive organs, it would have there wouldn't have been that alienation that she has with other people because she could theoretically have a Leo of her own at any time. Uh, but because she is lacking those organs, I think that she is now further separated from both humanity and also she can't willingly take on another person without actively making the choice to change somebody. So that's why I think she is lacking reproductive organs. Anyone else have an
Yeah,
answer? Okay.
I love that.
To piggyback off your last sentence, so to me, what came initially to mind was that's the only way that she can create now is to end something. And to me,
Yeah.
that's why she didn't have those reproductive organs, which like piggybacks right off your last comment, right? Like she can't just create.
Yeah.
In her state, she has to end in order to create, which like goes back to like Chernobog and like realizing that the god of endings is also the god of creation.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's super well phrased. Kind of gave me goosebumps. Um, yeah, I think I loved what you said about it has to be a choice. That was very important. Like it needs to be and it needs to cost something and be a little bit scary and a little bit destructive, like you said. Like it needed to be a scary, hard process that you had to fully choose and fully commit to, and be costly. The other thing is, from a writing standpoint, having her not reproduce normally. As you guys know, vampires are the sexiest monster. And so, in having her not have that, I was basically telling the reader, this isn't that book. Just forget it. Like, this is going to be about things other than that. And Anna is also shares with me the fact that she is kind of a brain on legs. Like, she is very disconnected from her body and very alienated. Alienation, I think, is another great word that pervades her existence. She's just so alienated. And the only way for her to connect is through her heart and her mind and her body in a sense. She does often, but it just has to be this kind of deeper soul connection rather than something, what is often examined in other literary vampire literature. Um, yeah, I think that about does it, about covers it.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to
Well,
pass you back to Maud.
what was your reaction to that? So I feel like some people would be like, "What? That's so weird. Why?"
Uh, no, actually, the way that you wrote it when it happened, I was like, "Ha, got him." That was,
I also wanted that moment for sure, where it's like, "Oh,
and
you're gonna
then
rape me?
after
Joke's
that,
on you."
yeah, and then after that, I just it was exactly like you said. I was like, "Oh, we're not gonna go anywhere near that for this book," and
Yeah,
I was immediately intrigued because, like I said, I've always loved vampires, and I was like, "Ah, something different, yay!" So it was just a joy for that little got him. So thank you so
great,
much.
great. I love that. That makes me happy.
Um, yeah, and I just want to say, since this is my last question, like I really, really enjoyed your writing in this book. And when
Yeah.
I was describing it to Trista, I was like, this, like reading this was like eating like chocolate ganache cake. Like it was just like so like dense and amazing, and like every bite
Wow.
was like delectable, and like
Oh my
really looking
gosh.
forward to more books from you.
Thank
Um,
you. That is quite the compliment.
um, But so my question is like it's kind of got parts, but like feel free to answer however you want. And you've answered like pieces of this before. So um the question is, what do you hope readers take away from the book? There's a lot of pessimism and depiction of human vampire monstrosity. Is the ending meant to be inspiring or horrific or a mixture of the two? And moreover, do you philosophically identify with any of those character perspectives in there?
I love that question, and I'm really happy to get to answer it. So I tried to make this, people come out in different places on this book. They have very different opinions about the ending, and I love that. I wouldn't have it any other way. Um, when I was a kid, I had this book, this picture book, and it was all in black and white, and you read it through one way, and it was like this journey, and it looked this one way. And then when you got to the end, you flipped it and you read it back the other way, and because of the black and white, the picture was different, and it was a different story, same page, same picture, but you saw it differently based on the orientation. And people rightly say that there's a lot of tragedy in this book, that there's a lot of violence and heartache and even pessimism, but I think that it and life is kind of a Rorschach test where it's there and what you see says something about you. Because Colette looked at life and she saw all the things that happened, and it was there was a lot of horror, but there was also arguably more beauty every step of the way. Like, how do you quantify, like this tragedy happened, but how much beauty was there? You can't even quantify beauty. everything's full of it. A tragedy you can quantify, but beauty and goodness you can't. And so there's a lot of tragedy, a lot of horror, but depending on which way you see it, there's more beauty and there's more goodness and there's more reason for hope. Um, and so the people who get to the end and say, like, she did wrong, she shouldn't have brought him into this horrible world, well, they're looking at the black part of the picture rather than the white part of the picture, you know? And that's what Colette was doing too for most of her long life. And at the end, it flipped for her. And she saw that no matter how much darkness there is more light, there is more beauty, there is more goodness, but you have to choose it. And nobody can choose that for anybody else. And so I am on Team Colette, unsurprisingly, probably. But everybody's gonna see the picture differently. Everybody's gonna quantify goodness and badness and beauty and horror differently, and they're gonna come to their conclusion on the basis of that.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
for
that
that
answer. That was
question.
lovely.
Are we going to see Colette again in literature?
I don't know. So I started writing a sequel years ago before I actually even finished revising the first one. Um, and it still interests me a lot. I think there's a lot of possibilities. Colette was certainly in it. I'm very interested in Leo's future. I'm very interested. There's a lot. I feel like there's a lot that I would really enjoy exploring further. I have a lot of projects in my brain, and I'm a slow writer, unfortunately. So I can't say for sure, but I definitely love her and love those characters, and it would not be I would enjoy revisiting, and there's a strong possibility. But also the truth is that whether or not you write a sequel to some extent depends on how your book sells. Because I could write it, but will my publisher want to publish it? That depends on how the God of Endings does. So I haven't had that conversation with my publisher yet. I suppose I could like self-print it or something like that, but
Okay, we're going to cross our fingers and toes.
okay, yeah.
I do want to recommend to everyone that you go to Jacqueline's website. You have 3 short stories on there. And the first one, I'm so sorry, I'm so bad with titles of the ocean.
Yeah, actually, let me tell you. So it's called Everything is an Ocean.
Heartbreaking.
That's all I do. I just break hearts, just heartbreaker. Everything is an Ocean. My publisher is actually republishing it very soon, and it's going to be a free ebook exclusive. It's going to have a new ending, an additional ending. So if you've already read it, you will still want to check it out. It's gonna be, and I think there's gonna be some really cool artwork to go along with it. So that should be coming out soon. And then I am also finishing up my second novel, which is a near future VR dystopia that I hope you will enjoy too. It's very different flavor, but still definitely my heart in there. So
Do you have just a rough estimate of when that might come out?
well, the only thing I've heard is 2026. So
Okay, we're
um
all there for it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean that's not that far away, right?
It is not, it's not. Jacqueline, thank you so much for taking the time with us this evening. We look forward to your next book.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you. You had such good questions and you're such kind and generous readers. Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah.